Hello and welcome back to Round the Table, your slow TV English class from the Meeting Point, broadcasting not only to Bilbao but throughout the world. So coming up in today's programme, we have a few What's the Difference questions for you. Then we will be having a bit of vocabulary related to the topic of the week, which of course is advertising. Then we have a monologue on the topic of advertising, read to you by our special celebrity guest speaker. Following that, we will then have a brief commercial break because we are talking advertising and I think we need some adverts. Then we've got an interesting fact for you, and maybe we'll have some more things. We'll see how much time we have. And now it's time to play the game called What's the Difference? Our first pair, nothing like and nothing to do with. This is often confused, and I'm sure I've described these fairly recently. Nothing like is talking about comparisons, meaning these two things are not similar. So if you have one person who is very tall with blonde hair and blue eyes, and the other one is short with dark hair and brown eyes, you can say that one person is nothing like the other. They are nothing like each other. Nothing to do with is talking about relations between things. So, for example, in a recent conversation, we were talking about the small family-owned businesses in Bilbao and the fact that they are disappearing, and at the same time there is a rise in tourism. But the two things are not connected. So the fact that all these small shops are closing has nothing to do with the increase in tourism, meaning there is no connection. We're not making a comparison like we are with nothing like. Okay, that is the difference. Let's move on to these three. Terrible, terrific, terrifying. Now, these words all probably come from the same root. And if you went back in time a few hundred years, they probably meant very similar things. But now they're quite different. Terrible, really, really bad. Terrific, amazing, fantastic, wonderful, very, very good. Terrifying is frightening. Okay, that film was terrifying. It scared me a lot. So these three things are totally unconnected in modern English. They probably were the same a long time ago. The next two, make the most of and take advantage of. Now they are very similar and they would translate into Spanish in the same way. The thing you have to remember is make the most of, much more positive, take advantage of, more negative. So let's use make the most of. For example, today is a bank holiday. It's May bank holiday. I have a free day, so I am making the most of my day by being very productive. Or you might say, the sun is shining, so I must go out and make the most of the good weather. Take advantage is more to do with exploiting another person's weaknesses. So, for example, if there's a person who's not very clever, it might be very easy to cheat them and take their money. Sometimes you might be able to take advantage of the situation. We were discussing this week the idea of when there's a big event in the town and the prices for the hotels are suddenly increased. So you might be able to say that those people are taking advantage of the situation. They're making more money because they know there's lots of demand for the hotel rooms. So that's the difference between make the most of and take advantage of. Audience and spectators. Well, if you look at the root of the word, the first one is to do with listening, as in audio. The second one is to do with looking at things. Usually we'll only use spectators in sporting events. In all other contexts, we normally now use audience. Originally it was people listening to music, then it was people listening to the radio, but then it moved from radio to television, and even though they were looking, we still use the same noun. So the audience is in most contexts. Hear and listen, very similar to see and look, that the second one is much more focused and concentrated. So, for example, I might hear my neighbours having an argument. I don't necessarily know what they're talking about, but I will hear this noise. I'm not really trying to, but I can't help hearing what's happening next door. Now, if I want to know what they're arguing about, I might go closer to the wall and put my ear to the wall and listen to their conversation. So listen is something that I'm trying to do, whereas hearing is not something I have to make any effort for. So the reason it came up in conversation this week is because you need phrases like I heard recently and I heard on the news. Don't say I listened recently. You need to say I heard. Because when you receive news and information, it's not something that you necessarily go looking for. It happens. You can say I was listening to the news, yeah. But generally you hear things by accident. You say, have you heard? So those are your what's the difference for this week. Let's move on to a bit of vocabulary. So these are some of the vocabulary things that came up during the week. Some of them were in the book, some of them weren't. So the first thing I need to say is propaganda. To me, propaganda is always political. I know in theory it should be here as well, but people do tend to bring propaganda from the supermarket to your house, which it seems to be totally wrong to me. Propaganda is very political, so don't use it in the context of advertising. The next one is commercial. Commercials for me are adverts that are on television. You don't see them in newspapers, they're just adverts, but we can use the word commercial when they're on television. Don't get confused with a salesperson. You can get a travelling salesman, for example, who is going around trying to sell the product to various people. He's not a commercial, okay? That's a false friend. So don't use commercial in that context. Commercial is a television advertisement. That is why you have a commercial break on TV. And that commercial break is not a spot, okay? A lot of people use this word spot. I don't think it refers to the commercial. I would say it refers to that short period of time that the commercial fits into. So the television company will sell advertising spots to the agency. So it might be that you have 5 spots during the day, but that could be the same advertisement 5 times. Okay? So it's not really the advertisement which is the spot. It's the time that it appears on TV is the spot. So you might buy a spot, but in the half time of a football match, for example, if you're a beer company, you might buy a spot at a specific time in the day. But generally we wouldn't say, did you see that spot? Because you're not seeing the spot, you're seeing the advertisement. Another one that wasn't in the book, which should have been there, was slogan. Slogan is a phrase that is used to sell a product. And I could invent a new game of what is the product, but then as you don't watch adverts in English, you won't recognise the slogans because they'd be very different. Slogan is an old Gaelic word. It actually means war cry. I can't remember exactly the Gaelic phrase, but it's something that they used to shout as they charged towards the enemy. So that's a Gaelic word, slogan. Another one here is jingle. Jingle is a little piece of music that is either used in advertising or on radio when they announce that the news is coming up, or all these little pieces of music that I like to put in when I'm going to do a what's the difference or a vocabulary. Those little things that I put in are jingles, little short introductory pieces of music. Yes, and it is like jingle bells. I imagine someone was ringing a bell to attract attention. I don't know. Jingle, jangle, very similar words. Another thing that came up this week, this is nothing to do with the vocabulary of advertising, but it was very important if you are in Spain or Portugal this week. A power cut. A power cut when the electricity goes off. It's called a power cut. You can also have an outage because the power goes out, and somebody invented the noun outage. There can also be a blackout, but I presume that would have to be during the night because it goes black. And don't forget, it's the electricity that is being cut off. Don't call it the light. Okay, the lights will go out if the electricity is cut off, but a lot of Spanglish speakers would use the light instead of the electricity. You have an electricity bill, for example. You're not paying for the light, you're paying for the electricity because there are lots of other uses apart from just light. So that's a little bit of vocabulary that was necessary in this week's conversation, which was all about advertising. So here is our celebrity reader with an interesting monologue on advertising.
Advertising has become so deeply woven into our lives that escaping it is nearly impossible. From the moment we wake up and check our phones to the moment we fall asleep with a TV show playing in the background, we are bombarded with advertisements. They are on billboards, buses, emails, social media feeds, streaming services, and even tucked discreetly into movies and songs. What once was limited to commercial breaks or magazine pages is now a constant hum in the background of our daily existence. This relentless presence has transformed advertising into something more than just an attempt to sell a product. It has become a powerful shaper of perceptions, aspirations, and emotions. Advertisers often recycle the same cliches because they tap into universal feelings. The gleaming car promising freedom, or the sparkling kitchen implying domestic bliss. These stock images may seem tired, but they persist because they work. They create quick emotional associations that bypass rational thought, planting the idea that happiness, love, or status is just one purchase away. Advertising often sells the illusion of individuality and independence. Brands encourage us to believe we are making bold, unique choices because you are special. The irony, of course, is that millions are buying the same phone, wearing the same clothes, or wearing the same perfume in an effort to express their uniqueness. By telling people they are independent thinkers, advertisers cleverly guide mass behavior without it feeling imposed. Choosing a product becomes an act of self-definition, not conformity, even when the result is widespread uniformity. Advertisements rarely show people who are simply content with what they have. Instead, they spread envy and discontent by presenting idealized versions of life, carefully curated to make the viewer feel that something is missing. That missing piece, we are told, can be obtained by buying the right product, wearing the right brand, or choosing the right service. Advertising also promises solutions to problems we may not have realized we had. Wrinkles, bad breath, outdated phones, or less than white laundry. By creating a problem and offering an immediate solution, advertisers position themselves as both the cause of and cure for dissatisfaction. The constant reminder that we could and should be better, younger, more successful, or more attractive creates a perpetual state of self-criticism. Our needs for belonging, esteem, and security are easily tapped and exploited. As technology advances and advertising becomes even more personalized and invasive, it is worth asking how much of what we want is truly our own desire, and how much has been quietly, cleverly planted by a world that never stops selling.
Now it's time for a commercial break.
I'm a modern woman, and with today's busy lifestyle, I like to show who's in charge. Be your own boss. Eat chips.
Do you have trouble fitting in with society? Do you feel that people are not taking you seriously? Have a haircut.
Are you new in the neighborhood? Annoy your new neighbors with loud music and dancing. Loud music and dancing. Fun for all the family.
I recently discovered reading. Now I have facts to support my ideas and no longer sound like an opinionated bigot. Read a book. For a really good night's sleep, you need cardboard boxes. You'll never sleep in a bed again. You probably won't even need a house. Cardboard boxes, so much more than packaging. This couple used to run a successful marketing company. They were wealthy and popular. Then they discovered tea. Now they have lost everything. Tea. Just say no.
Now it's time for an interesting fact. During the discussions on advertising and marketing, we got onto the topic of drinking champagne at special events and how that drink has been marketed for being such a luxurious special thing. And it seems that you cannot have any type of celebration without having champagne present. And we were wondering how they managed to market it in such a way. Well, apparently French kings in times gone by They were crowned in the town of Rheims, which is in the Champagne region. And all of the aristocrats being present, they would celebrate by drinking the local wine, which was champagne. So very early on, it had a connection with royal power, prestige, exclusivity, etc. Then over time, the marketers and the PR agents have elevated this drink to be an official drink of celebrations and victory. And since 1967, at the end of the Formula One races, they've been spraying champagne around to mark the celebration. Obviously, when the Formula One is in Dubai or somewhere like that, they're not spraying champagne. They've got some other non-alcoholic fizzy drink to spray. But, as I was saying, at every wedding, every New Year's Eve celebration, christenings, and even the christenings of a ship, the naming ceremony for ships, they smash a bottle of champagne on the front. Another interesting thing that we might have to come back to in the future, because in one of the units in the book we'll be talking about different senses and how one sense can affect the other. And a big part of champagne drinking is the popping of the cork. Now, this sort of a big explosion of noise is something very special that you don't normally get with other drinks. So that too has contributed to the exclusivity prestige idea of drinking champagne. It's a very special thing. And the marketing people have managed to promote this over the years, and now it's a vital part of any celebration, and didn't they do well? One brief announcement before we finish. Coming up on the 16th, Friday the 16th, we're having a beer and quiz in the meeting point. So we can only have about 10 people. All the questions are prepared. We'll get the beer on ice. There will be no champagne, only beer from the supermarket, but it's good enough for us. We're not proud. So get your name down if you want to join the quiz. And apart from that, that's all I have for you this week. So have a good week. Till next week.